The inspection ships arrived at Sigma Draconis exactly on schedule. 3 massive Calveth vessels, their hulls gleaming with the authority of 12,000 years of galactic dominance, descended toward the human colony worlds below. Commander Jask stood on the bridge of the lead ship, his 4 eyes scanning the data streams with practiced efficiency. Another human terraforming project, his second officer reported, mandibles clicking with mild disdain. They are slow but persistent, these humans. Jask nodded. In the 300 years since humanity had joined the Galactic Council as a junior species, they had proven to be exactly what the Council expected. Ambitious, but manageable. Creative, but controllable. The humans built their little colonies, paid their tithes, and most importantly, stayed within the strict military limitations imposed on all younger races. Below them, 3 worlds spun peacefully. New Terra, New Hope, and Freedom's Light, typical human naming conventions full of optimism and sentiment. Each planet showed the familiar signs of ongoing terraforming. Artificial atmospheres hung in varying stages of density. Oceans filled carefully constructed basins. Mountain ranges rose where tectonic manipulation had pushed the crust upward. It was impressive work, really, even if it took humans decades to complete what older races could accomplish in years. Begin standard scans, Jask ordered. Check for unauthorized weapon systems, strategic resource stockpiles, and military installations beyond permitted levels. The scans ran their course. Everything appeared normal. Small defense satellites orbited each world, their capabilities well within Council regulations. Ground-based installations showed agricultural centers, residential zones, and light industrial facilities. Population counts matched reported numbers. Energy signatures indicated standard fusion reactors. Nothing approaching the output that would suggest military-grade systems. All within compliance, the second officer confirmed. The humans are following the rules as always. Jask allowed himself a small gesture of satisfaction. The Calveth Dominion had enforced Council law for over 10 millennia. They knew what to look for. Rebellious species always made the same mistakes. They rushed, they hid weapons in obvious places, they let their energy signatures spike during secret weapons tests. The humans did none of these things. What Jask could not know, what his sophisticated scanners could not detect, was that the mountains his ship passed over were not mountains at all. The tectonic activity his sensors registered was not natural, but carefully generated. The 3 worlds below were not worlds in any real sense. They were shells, outer hulls of the largest warships ever constructed, their surfaces camouflaged with thousands of meters of soil, rock, and carefully maintained ecosystems. Deep beneath the surface of New Terra, in command centers that existed in spaces where planets should have solid cores, Admiral Victoria Chen watched the Calveth inspection proceed. Around her, thousands of officers monitored the deception with quiet intensity. Every false reading, every manufactured data point, every carefully crafted illusion had to be perfect. Atmospheric density holding at expected levels. One officer reported softly. Seismic activity pattern nominal. Ocean temperature gradients match terraforming projections. Victoria nodded but said nothing. She had been part of Revelation Protocol for 30 years, since she was a young lieutenant. Her grandmother had worked on it before her, and her grandmother's grandmother had been there at the beginning, 2.5 centuries ago when humanity had made its decision. The decision had been simple in concept, staggering in execution. If humanity wanted true freedom in a galaxy ruled by ancient powers, they would need to build something those powers could not ignore or destroy. But building such weapons openly would invite immediate destruction. So humanity would build them in secret, over generations, hidden in plain sight. The Kuiper Belt had provided the raw materials. Distant ice giants had been dismantled molecule by molecule. Asteroid mining operations that seemed routine had actually been feeding the largest construction project in human history. Resources moved through elaborate chains of transport, disguised as commercial shipping, hidden in the noise of human expansion. 37 construction sites across human space, each one appearing to be exactly what the Calveth and the Council expected to see. Colony worlds, mining operations, research stations, terraform projects, all of them real enough to pass any inspection, all of them hiding something vast beneath the surface. They are preparing to leave, an officer announced. Victoria watched the Calveth ships rise from the lower atmosphere. Their inspection complete, their reports ready to file. Another successful compliance check. Another year of humanity appearing to be exactly what the Council wanted them to be. Ambitious but not threatening. Expanding but not dangerous. On Earth, in a secured chamber beneath the Global Defense Committee headquarters, Marcus Webb reviewed the inspection reports. As humanity's senior ambassador to the Galactic Council, he had spent decades playing a careful role. He attended every session, gave every required speech, paid every tithe, and smiled while ancient races spoke to humanity as if addressing children. The Sigma Draconis inspection went smoothly, his aide reported. The Calveth found nothing suspicious, Marcus nodded. They never do. We have become very good at showing them exactly what they expect to see. How much longer? The aide asked quietly. Marcus looked at the star maps on the wall, showing human space as a small cluster surrounded by vast empires that had ruled for millennia. As long as it takes. Revelation protocol continues until we are ready or until we have no choice, whichever comes first. But Marcus could feel something changing in the Council. The older races were growing nervous about human expansion, about human population growth, about human influence in the Council chambers. Humanity had followed every rule, met every requirement, and still they were seen as a threat simply for existing successfully. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood in the Grand Council chamber on Calveth Prime, listening to Ambassador Vrex of the Vryn Collective present his case. The Vryn were one of the most militaristic empires in the Council, always eager to demonstrate strength, always looking for opportunities to expand their influence. The human population exceeds sustainable levels for a junior species, Vrex declared, his reptilian features arranged in what Marcus had learned to recognize as aggressive posturing. They occupy 17 star systems now. Their colonies grow faster than permitted rates. This cannot continue. Marcus felt ice form in his chest. This was not a normal policy debate. Vrex was building toward something specific. The Vryn Collective proposes a population correction. Vrex continued. Humanity must reduce its colonial population by 40% within 6 standard months, or face mandatory enforcement action. The chamber erupted in clicking, humming, and various forms of alien discussion. Marcus stood frozen. A population correction. They were demanding humanity surrender 2 billion lives or face military attack. Commander Jask, present as a council observer, watched the proceedings with professional detachment. The proposal was harsh but not unprecedented. Junior species needed to be managed, kept within proper bounds. The humans would comply, as they always had. They were reasonable after all. They understood their place in the galactic order. Marcus looked around the chamber at the representatives of 50 species, searching for allies, for sympathy, for any sign that someone would oppose this obscenity. He found only careful neutrality and cold calculation. The message was clear. Humanity was alone. When the vote came, the Council approved the Vryn proposal with overwhelming support. The Calveth Dominion, as enforcers of Council law, would ensure compliance if humanity refused. Marcus transmitted his report to Earth with shaking hands. 2.5 centuries of preparation, of patience, of careful planning. The time had come. On Earth, Commander General Sarah Okonkwo read the Council's ultimatum twice to be certain she understood. Then she opened the secure channel that had waited for 250 years. All Revelation sites, this is Central Command. Initiate awakening protocols. Wake the Titans. In Sigma Draconis, on 3 worlds that were not worlds, klaxons began to sound. Captain Jennifer Zhao had lived on New Terra her entire life. She had walked its mountains, swum in its oceans, and watched its sunsets for 32 years. She had never known that her entire world was about to move. The awakening sirens brought her running to her duty station deep beneath what she had always thought was Mount Providence. As she descended through access tunnels that had always been there but whose true purpose had been hidden, she began to understand the enormity of what humanity had built. The command center stretched for kilometers. Thousands of officers rushed to stations that had been maintained in secret, prepared for this moment through generations of training disguised as other things. Jennifer took her place at the navigation console and looked at the displays showing New Terra's true nature. She was not standing on a planet. She was inside Aegis, a warship 12,000 kilometers in diameter. The mountain above her was armor plating. The ocean she loved swimming in was a coolant reservoir. The tectonic activity she had studied in school was the movement of massive mechanical systems preparing to activate. All stations report ready. Admiral Victoria Chen's voice echoed through the command center. Begin primary system activation. Across New Terra's surface, the changes began. In the northern hemisphere, what appeared to be a volcanic mountain range split apart with perfect geometric precision. Segments of rock and soil retracted on massive hydraulic systems, revealing weapon emplacements that could crack moons. Each gun barrel was wider than a skyscraper. The oceans began to drain. Not catastrophically, but in controlled flows. Water rushing into internal reservoirs where it would serve as reaction mass and coolant for systems that would soon burn with incredible heat. Fish and marine life were automatically collected by systems designed for exactly this purpose, transferred to preservation tanks. Nothing was wasted. Everything had been planned. The atmosphere started to vent into massive storage spheres built into Aegis's internal structure. The sky thinned, stars becoming visible in daylight as the protective shell of air was carefully removed and stored. Citizens who had not been part of the military structure were already in evacuation craft, being transferred to actual colony worlds, their confusion and fear managed by personnel trained for this revelation. On Freedom's Light and New Hope, the same transformations occurred. The three massive ships began to shed their planetary disguises like butterflies emerging from cocoons. Except these butterflies were made of armor and weapons, powered by contained singularities that humanity had learned to create and control. The ship's reactors came online with a building hum that vibrated through every deck. Micro-singularities, tiny artificial black holes held in perfect magnetic suspension, began to spin faster. They devoured matter and released pure energy in quantities that would have powered Earth's entire civilization for centuries. Each of the three ships had 7 such reactors. The power they generated was almost beyond comprehension. Propulsion systems online, Jennifer reported, her hands steady despite the historical magnitude of the moment. Gravitational drives responding normally. Gravitational drives. Another secret humanity had kept. While the Council believed humans used conventional fusion drives, Earth scientists had cracked gravitic manipulation 50 years ago. The Titans didn't push against space. They bent it, folded it, made it take them where they wanted to go. Admiral Chen watched the system reports flow across her displays. Across human space, 37 installations were going through the same transformation. Not all were as large as the Titans in Sigma Draconis. Some were the size of moons, hidden in asteroid belts or disguised as mining stations. Others were massive asteroids that had always seemed a bit too perfectly positioned near major human colonies. 2 planet-sized ships orbited Earth itself. Sentinel had been hidden in what everyone thought was Luna's far side. The side always facing away from Earth had never been the moon at all, but the hull of a warship. Defiance had been disguised as the dwarf planet Eris, lurking in the outer solar system, its odd orbit finally making sense. "This is Central Command to all Revelation sites," Commander General Okonkwo's voice transmitted across the encrypted network. "Humanity has been given an ultimatum. The Galactic Council demands we surrender 2 billion lives or face military destruction. This is the moment we have prepared for. This is why we have built in secret for 250 years. Today we show the galaxy that humanity will not be controlled, will not be limited, and will not surrender our people to satisfy ancient powers who fear our success." On New Terra, now universally called Aegis, Jennifer felt the ship move for the first time. 12,000 kilometers of engineered perfection began to shift, to turn, to orient itself toward empty space where it could safely test systems that had never been fully activated. The first weapons test was simple. A secondary plasma cannon, one of the smaller weapons in Aegis's arsenal, targeted an uninhabited moon in the outer system. The capacitors charged with a rising whine. The magnetic containment field stabilized. The trigger authorization came through. The beam that lanced out was blue-white and so intense that even heavily filtered displays had to dim. It crossed 3 million kilometers in seconds and struck the moon dead center. The celestial body didn't explode dramatically. It simply ceased to exist, vaporized so completely that not even debris remained, just a rapidly expanding cloud of ionized particles. "Weapon test successful," the gunnery officer reported with professional calm, though his hands trembled slightly. "All primary systems functioning within expected parameters." Similar tests occurred at revelation sites across human space. The galaxy's monitoring stations, designed to detect large energy signatures and potential threats, suddenly lit up with readings that should have been impossible. Junior species weren't supposed to have weapons like these. Junior species weren't supposed to have any weapons that could threaten Council members. On Calveth Prime, Commander Jask stared at the reports flooding in from sensor stations throughout the galaxy. The humans. The compliant, careful, patient humans had been building weapons in secret. Not just weapons, ships. Not just ships, massive battle stations disguised as planets and moons. How? His second officer asked, mandibles clicking in confusion and fear. How did we not see this? Jask understood, and the understanding chilled him. Because they thought in centuries, not years. They built slowly enough that no single inspection would see progress. They hid everything in plain sight, making us see exactly what we expected. They played a game longer than most civilizations exist. At the Vryn collective homeworld, war leader Krax received the same reports. His response was immediate and predictable. They seek to intimidate us. They reveal weapons to make us back down from our rightful demand. His claws scraped against the metal of his command throne. We will show them the price of defiance. Launch the Grand Fleet. Destroy Earth before they can bring these weapons to bear. The Vryn Grand Fleet was impressive by any measure. 3,000 warships built over centuries, equipped with weapons that had conquered 17 species. They had never lost a major engagement. Their doctrine was simple. Overwhelming force applied without mercy. The fleet entered Earth's solar system confident of victory. They expected to face humanity's permitted defense fleet, perhaps 200 ships of limited capability, protecting a homeworld that could not escape or hide. Instead, they found Sentinel and Defiance waiting for them. The two planet-sized warships hung in space like artificial moons, their surfaces no longer disguised. Every weapon emplacement was visible, every shield generator glowing with barely contained power. They did not move to intercept the Vryn fleet. They simply waited, vast and terrible and completely calm. War leader Krax stared at the sensor readings in disbelief. The two objects ahead were larger than his entire fleet combined. The energy signatures coming from them exceeded anything in the Vryn database. But he had 3,000 ships and they had conquered worlds. He would not show fear. All vessels, attack formation Delta, he ordered. Target the larger construct. Fire all weapons. The Vryn fleet opened fire. Missiles by the thousands, particle beams, plasma cannons, kinetic penetrators, everything they had all at once. The barrage would have destroyed any planet's defenses, would have cracked a world's crust, would have ended any species that faced it. Sentinel's shields activated. The barrier that sprang into existence was not visible, not in normal space. It existed in a slightly different dimension, a fold in space-time that the attack had to cross. The Vryn weapons hit that barrier and simply stopped. Their energy absorbed and redirected into Sentinel's reactor systems, actually making the ship stronger. Then Sentinel returned fire. Jennifer Zhao, watching from Aegis billions of kilometers away, saw the battle through sensor feeds. She watched as Sentinel's main cannon fired once, just once. The beam was so powerful that it created a visible distortion in space itself. It didn't just hit ships, it erased them from existence hundreds at a time, boring through the Vryn formation like a finger through smoke. The battle lasted 6 hours. The Vryn threw everything they had at two ships that seemed almost bored by the assault. Sentinel and Defiance moved with grace impossible for objects their size. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called within hours of the Vryn fleet's destruction. 50 species, some who had held power for millennia, gathered to discuss something that should have been impossible. A junior species had not only defied them, but had obliterated one of the Council's military powers, without suffering a single loss. High Chancellor Mordak of the Calveth Dominion stood at the center of the Great Chamber, his 4 eyes surveying the assembled representatives. For 10,000 years, the Dominion had been the Council's enforcers, the iron fist that maintained order. Now that order was threatened by creatures who had been considered barely more than children just days ago. The human action cannot be tolerated, Mordak declared, his translator converting his complex vocalizations into words every species could understand. They have violated every principle of Council law. They built weapons in secret. They deceived inspection teams. They destroyed a Council member's fleet. If we allow this to stand, the entire structure of galactic governance will collapse. Ambassador Marcus Webb stood in the human delegation area, his face carefully neutral. He had prepared for this moment, had rehearsed the words, but speaking them still felt like stepping off a cliff. Humanity violated no law, Marcus said clearly. We were never prohibited from terraforming. We were never told we could not build large structures. Every inspection found us in compliance because we were in compliance. The Dominion saw what it expected to see and never asked the deeper questions. You hid warships as planets, Athelian representative shrieked, their feathers ruffling in agitation. We built defensive installations and disguised them cleverly, Marcus corrected. The Council demanded we limit our military capability. We did. We are permitted 200 system defense ships. We have exactly 200. The Titans are not ships in the traditional sense. They are mobile defense platforms, and nowhere in Council law does it specify the maximum size of such platforms. The argument was technically accurate and everyone knew it. Humanity had found a loophole not through legal genius but through asking a simple question. What exactly did the Council's laws actually prohibit? They prohibited certain numbers of ships, certain types of weapons, certain military organizations. They never imagined someone would build something so large that it transcended their categories. Mordak's mandibles clicked in frustration. Legal technicalities cannot disguise the reality. Humanity has built weapons of mass destruction. They have upset the balance of power. This cannot be allowed to continue. Then the Council should not have given us an ultimatum demanding we kill 2 billion of our own people, Marcus replied, his voice hardening. You created this situation. You pushed a species into a corner and assumed we would submit like others before us. You were wrong. The chamber erupted in dozens of different forms of noise, alarm calls, aggressive vocalizations, electronic protests. Marcus stood quietly at the center of it, waiting for the chaos to subside. When order returned, Mordak spoke with cold finality. The Calveth Dominion will assemble a fleet. Not 3,000 ships, but 50,000. We will bring the combined might of the Council itself to bear. Humanity will surrender these weapons, submit to permanent monitoring, and accept whatever population controls the Council deems necessary, or they will be destroyed. Marcus had expected this. Earth's strategists had predicted the Dominion would respond with overwhelming force. It was, after all, what had always worked before. Rebellious species were crushed, order was restored, and the galaxy continued under Council control. Then there will be war, Marcus said simply. And when it is over, the galaxy will be different. We recommend you consider that carefully. The fleet that assembled at Calveth Prime over the next 3 months was the largest military force ever gathered in recorded galactic history. 52,000 warships from 14 different Council species, coordinated by the Dominion's most experienced fleet commanders. It was a show of force meant to intimidate as much as destroy. High Admiral Zelnoth commanded the armada from the super dreadnought Eternal Victory, a ship so large it carried its own fleet of smaller vessels in its bays. He studied the tactical displays showing human space, the positions of the Titans, the locations of human colonies. The humans have 37 of these weapons platforms, his tactical officer reported, concentrated around their major systems but with significant gaps in coverage. If we divide our forces and strike simultaneously at multiple points, we can overwhelm their defenses. Zelnoth nodded slowly. The Titans were formidable, but they were also static defenses. They could not be everywhere at once. His fleet would strike in 3 massive prongs, forcing the humans to spread their forces thin, then crush them through sheer numbers and coordinated fire. What Zelnoth did not know, could not know, was that humanity's defensive strategy did not rely on the Titans being everywhere. It relied on something the Council had never seen before: integrated fleet tactics combining the Titans with thousands of smaller human vessels that had been quietly upgraded with weapons far beyond Council specifications. The first prong of the Calveth. Assault entered human space near the Tau Ceti system. 17,000 warships, more than enough to overwhelm any defense. They found 8 Titans waiting for them, along with 500 human cruisers and destroyers. Captain Jennifer Zhao, now commanding a wing of Aegis's support fleet, watched as the enemy armada approached. The tactical display showed the odds: 17,000 to 500, not counting the Titans. In traditional warfare, those odds meant certain defeat, but this was not traditional warfare. All ships, implement Drone Protocol 7, came the command from Aegis. Let them see what cooperative defense really means. The human fleet began launching drones. Not simple missiles or fighters, but autonomous combat units networked together through quantum communication, sharing targeting data instantaneously, coordinating their movements with mechanical precision impossible for living pilots. Thousands of drones. Tens of thousands. Small, hard to target, each one carrying weapons that could cripple ships far larger than themselves. They swarmed toward the Calveth fleet like locusts, guided by tactical AI that had been trained in simulations running continuously for decades. The Calveth fleet opened fire, destroying drones by the hundreds. But for every drone destroyed, 10 more slipped through the defensive fire. They attached to hulls, burrowed through armor, detonated internal systems. The Calveth ships began taking damage not from overwhelming firepower, but from thousands of small wounds that accumulated into crippling injuries. Then the Titans opened fire. 8 artificial planets, each bristling with weapons that could shatter worlds, coordinated their fire with perfect precision. They did not fire randomly or independently. Each shot was calculated, each target selected for maximum strategic impact. They struck command ships first, decapitating the enemy's leadership. Then they targeted shield generators on the largest vessels, leaving them vulnerable to the drone swarms. Admiral Zelnoth watched in horror as his first prong began to disintegrate. Ships exploded, collided with each other trying to evade the swarms, lost power, and drifted helplessly. His fleet was not being defeated, it was being systematically dismantled. Pull back, he ordered. Reform at Rally Point Delta. But the Titans did not allow retreat. They moved, their gravitational drives pushing them across distances impossibly fast, cutting off escape routes. The battle became a slaughter, not through cruelty but through perfect tactical execution. The humans did not gloat or taunt. They simply destroyed every ship that refused to surrender and captured every crew that abandoned their vessels. The second and third prongs of the Calveth assault met similar fates. Each engagement followed the same pattern. The Council forces had superior numbers, but humanity had superior technology, better coordination, and most importantly, no fear of fighting an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for 10 millennia. Commander General Sarah Okonkwo coordinated the defense from Earth, watching multiple battle feeds simultaneously. She saw patterns the Council did not. Understood that this was not really about defeating humanity's military. This was about breaking a myth. For 10,000 years, the Council had maintained power through the belief that resistance was futile. Species submitted not because the Council was unbeatable, but because everyone believed the Council was unbeatable. Humanity's task was not to win, it was to prove that winning was possible. Broadcast all battle footage on open channels, Sarah ordered. Make sure every species in the galaxy can watch, and watch they did. On thousands of worlds, billions of beings saw the supposedly invincible Calveth Dominion being systematically destroyed. They saw ancient dreadnoughts, ships that had enforced Council law for longer than some civilizations had existed, torn apart by weapons they had never imagined. More importantly, they saw humanity's restraint. Human forces targeted engines and life support, forcing surrender rather than annihilation. They recovered escape pods, treating captured crews with dignity. They did not wage war with cruelty or hatred, but with cold professional efficiency, aimed at ending the conflict with minimum loss of life. After 3 months of continuous warfare, the Calveth Dominion had lost 78% of its fleet. The restructured Galactic Council convened 6 months after the end of hostilities. The chamber looked the same ancient architecture, the same symbolic arrangements that had existed for millennia. But everything else had changed fundamentally. For the first time in 10,000 years, no species sat above the others. The tiered system that had divided civilizations into senior, junior, and probationary categories had been abolished. Every species, whether they had been spacefaring for millennia or mere centuries, held equal voting power. It was a change so profound that many older species still struggled to accept it. Ambassador Marcus Webb took his seat in what had once been the junior species section, now simply called the Human Delegation Area. Beside him sat representatives from Earth's military, scientific, and civilian leadership. Humanity had learned not to separate diplomacy from the other aspects of governance. They all needed to be present, all needed to understand what was being decided. The first order of business, announced moderator Ziltath, A Thelian who had been elected to the new rotating moderator position, is the establishment of the Joint Defense Initiative. Ambassador Webb, humanity has offered to place the Titans under Council oversight. Please elaborate. Marcus stood, feeling the weight of thousands of eyes and sensors and visual organs of a dozen types upon him. The Titans were built to defend humanity, but we recognize that in a galaxy without arbitrary power structures, defense becomes everyone's concern. We propose that the Titans serve as a peacekeeping force under Council direction, with crews and commanders drawn from multiple species. You would trust others to command your ultimate weapons? Asked Chancellor Vren of the Aranthi Collective, one of the species that had fought alongside the Calveth Dominion. We would work with others to ensure peace, Marcus corrected. The Titans will retain Earth-appointed commanders, but each ship will carry multinational crews and operate under mandates approved by the Council. They will respond to genuine threats to Council members, piracy, and unauthorized aggression. They will not be used to enforce political will. The debate that followed lasted 3 days. Some species saw this as humanity maintaining too much power. Others worried that without centralized military authority, chaos would reign. Smaller species that had suffered under the old system supported humanity's proposal, seeing it as their best protection against the return of the old order. In the end, the Council approved the Joint Defense Initiative by a narrow margin. The Titans would serve as peacekeepers, but with careful checks on their power. No single species could order them to attack another Council member. Any military action required approval from a newly formed Security Council that included representatives from 20 different civilizations. The real work, however, happened not in the Council chambers but in the less formal meetings between delegations. Captain Jennifer Zhao found herself in one such meeting, representing humanity in technical discussions with the Merilith, an insectoid species that had excellent engineering capabilities but had been limited to basic technology under the old Council rules. We want to understand your gravitational drive systems. The Merilith delegate, Hive Speaker Zix, communicated through translation, not to copy them but to learn the principles. Under the old rules, we were prohibited from even researching such technology, Jennifer considered carefully. The decision about what to share and what to keep secret would shape the galaxy's future. I can arrange for basic principles to be shared, but I need your commitment that this will be used for peaceful purposes. We are not a warlike species, Zix assured her. We simply want the ability to defend ourselves without depending on others. Is that not what humanity fought for? The question struck home. Humanity had fought for self-determination, for the right to develop without artificial limits. Could they now impose those same limits on others? The ethical complexity made Jennifer's head hurt. I will recommend full disclosure, she said finally, but with the understanding that the Council's new oversight mechanisms apply. We cannot go back to the old system where knowledge was hoarded by the powerful. These conversations were happening across the galaxy. Species that had been restricted for centuries suddenly had access to technologies and information they had only dreamed about. Some used it wisely. Others rushed into developments they were not ready for. The Corthan Assembly, a militaristic species that had chafed under Council restrictions, began their own warship construction program, within months of the new order being established. They did not build planet-sized weapons. They lacked the resources and knowledge. But they did begin assembling a fleet that worried their neighbors. This is what we feared, High Chancellor Mordak said during an emergency council session. The Calveth leader had been allowed to retain his position, though his power was greatly reduced. Without restrictions, without order, species will arm themselves out of fear. We will see an arms race that could destabilize everything. Marcus Webb did not disagree with the assessment, but he had a different interpretation. Yes, there will be an adjustment period. Species that felt defenseless will want to ensure their security. But the alternative, enforced helplessness backed by overwhelming military force, was not sustainable. It only lasted as long as no one was willing to challenge it. And now someone did. Mordak said bitterly, now the dam is broken. Now we have a chance to build something better, Marcus countered. A system based on cooperation rather than domination, on mutual defense rather than enforced pacification. It will be messy. It will be dangerous. But it has a chance of being just. The true test of the new order came not from ambitious species building fleets, But from an unexpected direction, the Vryn Collective, humiliated by their defeat and subsequent loss of status, had been quietly rebuilding. Not their conventional fleet, they lacked the resources for that, but something far more dangerous. Intelligence reports reached Earth showing that Vryn scientists were developing stellar compression weapons, devices that could cause a star to collapse prematurely, destroying entire star systems. It was forbidden technology under the oldest council laws, weapons so terrible that even the ancient powers had agreed never to use them. Commander General Sarah Okonkwo read the reports with growing concern. They're going to try to destroy Earth. It is the only move that makes sense for them. If they cannot defeat us militarily, they will attempt to erase us entirely, then claim it was an accident or natural phenomenon. Can we stop them? Asked Admiral Victoria Chen, now serving as humanity's chief military coordinator for the Joint Defense Initiative. Not if they launch from deep in their own territory, Sarah admitted. These weapons are small, easily hidden. By the time we detect them activating, it will be too late. The decision about how to handle the Vryn threat revealed deep divisions in the new council. Some species argued for immediate military intervention, go to Vryn space and destroy their capability before they could use it. Others insisted that would be no different from the old system, where the powerful impose their will on the weaker. We need proof before we act, moderator Ziltath insisted. We cannot have the Titans attacking a council member based solely on intelligence reports that could be wrong. And if we wait for proof, Earth dies, Marcus Webb said bluntly. Along with 8 billion people in the heart of human civilization, you ask us to gamble our entire species on the hope that our intelligence is wrong. The debate went in circles until unexpected allies emerged. 3 species that neighbored the Vryn Collective came forward with their own intelligence, confirming the weapon development. They had been monitoring the Vryn for their own security and had reached the same conclusions as Earth. More importantly, they had a proposal. Let us offer the Vryn a choice, suggested Ambassador Krell of the Thorian Union. Join the Joint Defense Initiative, open their facilities to inspection, and prove they are not building these weapons. Or face a multinational peacekeeping action that will shut down the program by force. It was a compromise that satisfied no one completely, which made it politically viable. The Council voted to deliver an ultimatum to the Vryn Collective, demonstrate compliance or face consequences. The Vryn response came not in words but in action. A stellar compression weapon launched from a hidden facility in the Vryn outer territories, aimed directly at Sol, humanity's home star. The weapon was designed to take 3 months to reach its target, giving it time to accelerate to relativistic speeds that would make it nearly impossible to intercept. Except the Joint Defense Initiative had been prepared for exactly this scenario. Sentinel and Defiance, the 2 Titans guarding Earth, had been equipped with long-range detection systems specifically designed to spot stellar weapons. They detected the launch within hours. The interception required a Titan to leave Earth's orbit, a decision that left humanity's homeworld temporarily less defended. Admiral Chen made the call personally, ordering Defiance to intercept while Sentinel and the home fleet maintained Earth's defenses. Defiance caught the Vryn weapon 40 million kilometers from Earth, deep in interplanetary space. The planet-sized warship did not destroy the weapon. That could have caused it to detonate prematurely. 5 years after Revelation Protocol changed the galaxy forever, Ambassador Marcus Webb stood in a place he had never expected to visit, the Memorial Garden of Fallen Empires, located on Calveth Prime itself. The garden honored civilizations that had risen and fallen throughout the galaxy's history, species that had once dominated and then vanished into memory. The Calveth had added a new section to the memorial, not for a fallen civilization but for a fallen system of governance. A simple monument bore the inscription in 73 languages. Here lies the age of domination. May we remember its lessons and never repeat its mistakes. High Chancellor Mordak, now elderly and serving his final term before retirement, walked beside Marcus through the garden. The Calveth leader moved slowly, his 4 eyes dimmed by age and perhaps by the weight of witnessing the end of an era he had helped enforce. I hated you for a long time, Mordak admitted, his translator rendering his complex vocalizations into clear human speech. You destroyed everything I believed was necessary for galactic stability. You made a mockery of 10,000 years of careful order. Marcus nodded, unsurprised. And now? Now I wonder if that order was worth the price it demanded, Mordak said quietly. We kept the peace, yes, but we kept it by crushing anyone who might disturb it. We prevented wars by preventing freedom. Perhaps that was never sustainable. Perhaps it only worked until someone was willing to pay the cost of resistance. They walked in silence for a moment before Mordak continued. Your species thinks in long time frames. You built for centuries without losing sight of your goal. That is rare. Most civilizations cannot maintain focus across generations. They fragment, they forget. They abandon complex plans when the founders die. We had motivation, Marcus said simply. We knew what would happen if we failed. And we knew that the galaxy would never accept us as equals unless we proved we could not be controlled. You proved that decisively, Mordak said with what might have been bitter amusement. Perhaps too decisively. Now every ambitious species thinks they can do what you did. We are seeing weapon development programs across the galaxy. Some species are cooperating and sharing technology. Others are competing and hiding their progress. The new order is chaotic. Chaos is the price of freedom, Marcus replied. The old order was stable because it was rigid. Rigid systems don't bend, they break. You saw that yourself when we pushed back. The entire structure collapsed because it could not adapt. They reached a viewing platform that overlooked Calveth Prime's capital city. The metropolis stretched to the horizon. Billions of beings living their lives under a government that was learning to function without absolute military supremacy. It was an adjustment that had not been easy. What happens next? Mordak asked. Your Titans maintain the peace now, but they are still controlled primarily by humans. The other species tolerate this because they fear you, not because they trust you. That fear will fade with time, and then what? It was a question that kept Marcus awake at night. The Titans had been built to defend humanity, but now they served a broader purpose. Eventually, humanity would need to share control more genuinely, to trust that other species could wield such power responsibly. That transition would be delicate and potentially dangerous. We adapt, Marcus said, as we always have, as we always will need to. Across the galaxy, that adaptation was already underway in ways both promising and troubling. On Prometheus, the Titan that had once been disguised as Freedom's Light, a remarkable experiment in multi-species cooperation was taking place. The ship had been converted into a mobile academy and cultural center, traveling between star systems and serving as a meeting ground for young beings from dozens of different civilizations. They came to learn, to teach, to simply exist together in a space that belonged to no single species. Captain Jennifer Zhao, now promoted to admiral and serving as Prometheus's commander, walked through corridors that had once been weapons bays and now housed classrooms, laboratories, and cultural exchange centers. She passed a group of Merlith younglings learning human mathematics from an Earth professor. In another section, human students practiced Thelian musical forms under the guidance of a master artist. The observation deck had become the ship's most popular gathering place. Young beings from across the galaxy stood together, watching the stars pass by through transparent sections of the hull, discussing philosophy and science and art in the universal language of curiosity. Admiral Zhao, a voice called out. She turned to see Crix, a young Vryn who served on Prometheus's multinational crew. The Vryn species was still recovering from the shame of their attempted attack on Earth, and many Vryn faced prejudice because of their leadership's actions. But Crix had worked hard to earn respect through competence and dedication. What is it, Crix? We are receiving a distress call from the Outer Rim. A mining colony is under attack by pirates. They are requesting assistance. Jennifer nodded and headed for the command center. This was part of Prometheus's mission, not just cultural exchange but practical peacekeeping. The Titans could not be everywhere, but they could respond to threats that the smaller Council security forces could not handle alone. The pirate force, when Prometheus arrived at the mining colony, turned out to be more organized than expected. 60 ships well-armed and coordinated, clearly part of a larger operation. The pirates had been taking advantage of the chaos of the new galactic order, raiding colonies that could not defend themselves adequately. Open a channel, Jennifer ordered. When the communication line established, she addressed the pirate commander directly. This is Admiral Zhao of the Joint Defense Initiative Peacekeeping Station Prometheus. You are engaged in illegal activity against a protected Council colony. Cease your attack immediately and prepare to be taken into custody. The pirate response was defiant and predictable. The Council means nothing out here. Your rules and your authority do not reach the Rim. Leave or be destroyed. Jennifer sighed. The galaxy was still full of those who believed strength was the only currency that mattered, who thought the changes at the council level were just politics that did not affect real life. They were wrong, and she would have to prove it. Weapons officer, disable their engines, she commanded. All of them. Simultaneously. Minimum force. Prometheus possessed targeting systems that could track thousands of objects at once, weapons that could fire with precision across millions of kilometers, and computational power that could calculate complex intercept solutions in microseconds. The pirate fleet designed to terrorize undefended colonies was simply outmatched. 60 precise shots from Prometheus's secondary batteries. 60 pirate ships suddenly drifting, their engines destroyed, their crews unharmed but completely helpless. The entire engagement lasted 17 seconds. Now, Jennifer said calmly, prepare to be taken into custody. Council security forces are on their way to collect you and escort you to trial. You have the right to legal representation. You have the right to a fair hearing. These rights cannot be taken from you. We are not here to execute you. We are here to enforce the law fairly. It was a statement that would have been unthinkable under the old system. The Calveth Dominion had not taken pirates prisoner. They had simply destroyed them. Mercy had been seen as weakness. But humanity had insisted that the new order must be based on justice, not just force. The rescued colony's gratitude was overwhelming. They sent messages of thanks, offered payments that Prometheus politely refused, and most importantly, shared their story across local communication networks. Word spread about the Titans and their crews, about how they protected not just the powerful but everyone. It was good publicity, but it was also revealing an uncomfortable truth. The galaxy had become dependent on the Titans. Without them, many regions would descend into chaos. Piracy would flourish, territorial disputes would escalate into wars, and the weak would suffer as they always had. On Earth, Commander General Sarah Okonkwo wrestled with this reality during a meeting with her senior staff. We are becoming what we fought against, she said bluntly. The Calveth maintained order through overwhelming military power. Now we are doing the same thing, just with prettier words about justice and cooperation. Admiral Victoria Chen, who had commanded the first Titan and now served as Sarah's strategic advisor, shook her head. There is a difference. The Calveth prevented species from developing their own defenses. We are actively sharing technology and training other species to protect themselves. In another generation, the Titans will not be necessary. Will we really let them go when that time comes? Sarah challenged. Or will we find reasons why they are still needed? Why humanity must keep control for the good of the galaxy? It was a question with no easy answer, and everyone in the room knew it. Power once held was difficult to release. The test of humanity's principles would come not in how they seized control, but in whether they could genuinely share it or eventually surrender it. The answer began to form in an unexpected place. The Corthan Assembly, which had worried the Council with their military buildup, approached humanity with a proposal. They wanted to build their own mobile defense platform, not as large as a Titan but still substantial. And they wanted humanity's help to do it.